can the younger generations chill just a little bit and let gay people build stuff for ourselves? And some spaces are inherently exclusionary. It is what it is. Not everything is for you, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, doesn't mean that you're not liked. It just means that you're not welcome in the Pink Pony Club because you're not a gay guy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the news roundup for October 20th, 2025. We are here with Joss, Sylvia, and me, Arianne. First, a summary of the news. California Governor Gavin Newsom vetoes the pro-gender identity in healthcare bill SB 418. NBC News disbands their LGBTQ team as part of their mass layoffs. John Oliver skewers Bari Weiss after she is promoted to editor-in-chief of CBS News. The Heritage Foundation's Oversight project encourages the FBI to investigate trans-inspired terrorism. An alleged hate crime reported against a gay couple in a Boston suburb, and the gay male-centered Pink Pony Club in Australia is in hot water over so-called cultural appropriation of lesbian culture. And we're going to begin with the West Coast. On October 13th, California Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed SB 418, a bill that, if passed, would have modified the state's health and safety code and insurance code to define sex to include gender identity. In other words, it would have banned healthcare providers from discriminating according to gender identity. As the Northern California-based group Women Are Real points out, in practice that would have required insurance companies to cover all sex trait modification procedures. Indeed, the California LGBTQ Health and Human Services Network, in its lament of Governor Newsom's veto, acknowledged that part of the impetus behind SB 418 was to compensate for the federal government's attempt to crack down on gender medicalization for minors. According to a statement released on their website's blog written by Danny Ksenia, quote, "As someone who remembers the perilous days of the black market hormone trade, I cannot stand by and watch our gender-diverse siblings be forced back into harmful, unregulated practices being pushed by the federal administration by potentially banning gender-affirming care for our youth and possibly all adults." SB 418 was a crucial step forward. It would have strengthened anti-discrimination protections based on gender identity and secured a vital 6 to 12 month supply of hormone replacement therapy. This was not just a win for the TGI community, it was a safeguard for all Californians needing HRT, including cisgender folks going through perimenopause, cancer treatments, or IVF. Unquote. This quote highlights a common tactic of the TQ plus lobby, namely trying to market unpopular policies like gender medicalization for kids with more popular ideas like helping cancer patients. In other cases, trans activists have tried bundling pro-gender ideology legislation with abortion rights. In any case, Danny Ksenia's admission that SB 418 was a crucial step forward in response to the federal government's attack on pediatric transition is telling. As a member of Women Are Real testified in front of the California legislature, quote, "SB 418 creates an impossible conflict between state and federal law that will end up devastating healthcare access for all Californians. By attempting to circumvent President Trump's EO 14187, this bill forces insurance companies and healthcare providers into an untenable position." Unquote. In other words, this bill seemed to be written to provoke yet another clash between California and the Trump administration. Now, Newsom, in his veto, dodged the issue of gender identity by focusing on healthcare costs. He objected to the bill's provision for a 12-month supply of hormones because it doesn't use or utilization management. Utilization management is a process in healthcare designed to keep costs down by preventing unnecessary procedures and administrative costs. So Governor Newsom says in his veto that he's concerned that the lack of is unwise when healthcare costs are already increasing by double digits. Now, some more cynically minded people might think that this could be a convenient excuse for Newsom, who is likely going to run for president, to distance himself from nationally unpopular legislation without offending his pro-TQ donor base in California. Or maybe the governor is genuinely concerned about the state's healthcare costs and doesn't want social issues to distract from that. Judge for yourself. In any case, it perhaps is representative of a shifting political landscape where TQ activists can no longer count on the Democratic governor of California being an uncritical ally in all legislation. And now for some media news. On October 15th, NBC announced major layoffs and reorganization, including the elimination of NBC Out, its team covering LGBTQ plus issues. In total, about 150 staffers, or 7% of NBC's entire team, were laid off. According to reporting from The Advocate, this reorganization was triggered by MSNBC's separation from NBC News to operate instead under Versant, a new media company to be formed by Comcast that consolidates NBC Universal's U.S. cable news networks. The Advocate reports that executives described the decision as a, quote, efficiency measure to eliminate overlap and streamline operations across NBC Universal's news division, unquote. That said, it's hard to avoid the conclusion that NBC's decision was also triggered by backlash against diversity, equity, and inclusion, as teams dedicated to covering Asian, African American, and Latino issues have also been cut. It remains to be seen how NBC's cut of NBC Out will affect coverage of LGB issues specifically. Out of curiosity, I did a search for LGBTQ plus on NBC's website. There were indeed articles about gay people and gay rights, even though they had the whole LGBTQ plus alphabet soup in their title. For example, one article from October 11th was titled, New Exhibit Highlights LGBTQ Legacy of Harlem Renaissance. And then the article goes on to mention that the exhibit in question is about the gay Harlem Renaissance, and that its chief historian is George Chauncey. He is the author of a book that we once read for our book club and that I highly recommend called Gay New York, 1890 to 1940. So in fairness to NBC, they do have some genuinely thoughtful coverage of LGB issues, even when they use the muddled LGBTQ label in their titles. Other articles are more frustrating to read. Like, for example, they had a June 2nd article, which uncritically reported on GLAAD's anti-LGBTQ extremism reporting tracker. So overall, NBC is a mixed bag. It's very biased towards a TQ plus perspective, but it also does have some nuggets of helpful reporting on LGB issues at times. On one hand, getting rid of NBC Out could be a needed reboot that could get NBC to focus less on TQ activist framing of all things related to gender and sexuality. On the other hand, it would be a shame if it meant that NBC will cut out coverage of these issues entirely. Here's to hoping that one day, we can finally see American journalism that is informative and accurate and doesn't get its talking points from partisan sources. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Sylvia.
Thanks, Arianne. The Free Press is an independent news organization founded by Bari Weiss. Bari worked at the Wall Street Journal and then at the New York Times before leaving the New York Times in 2020 due to what she called an illiberal culture. After leaving the New York Times, she began a Substack, which, with the help of her wife, Nellie Bowles, and her sister, Susie Weiss, quickly grew into the empire that the Free Press is today. For those unfamiliar with the work of the Free Press, it employs people from across the political spectrum and covers a wide range of topics, from angles often unseen by the mainstream legacy news orgs. One example, It was the Free Press that broke the story of the youth gender clinic whistleblower Jamie Reed long before any other major news outlets covered any whistleblower story. Now, the Free Press has been bought by Paramount, and Bari will become the editor-in-chief of CBS News. Recently, John Oliver covered this in his pundit show Last Week Tonight, where he implies that Bari is secretly a conservative because she wants lower taxes, is okay with people viewing her marriage as illegitimate, and values the freedoms of Western culture. He spent an entire 30-minute segment devaluing her accomplishments at the Free Press, questioning her journalistic integrity, and gaslighting her and the audience on the bias within most mainstream media. Bari has stated that her goal at the Free Press is to platform unheard sides of stories and to leave conclusions up to the viewers. We think this is an admirable goal. Whether Bari will achieve that goal, the audience can judge for themselves. We will be keeping a close eye on CBS News, particularly with regards to gender ideology and the split between the LGBTQ. Rest assured, we will hold her feet to the fire every bit as much as we hold all news organizations. We look forward to seeing what comes next with CBS. In Mattapan, a suburb of the Boston area, a gay couple were walking to a convenience store where they were accosted by a group of 5 men. 2 of those 5 men allegedly spewed homophobic language. This led to a verbal altercation between the gay men and the group of 5. The verbal altercation then turned violent, and when officers arrived, they found one of the gay men lying in the street, bleeding from the back of his head. The couple were taken to the hospital to be treated, and a warrant was put out for the arrest of the 5 men. Those 5 men have been found and are facing charges of assault and battery, though authorities are not seeking civil rights charges. The gay couple in question have chosen to remain anonymous. The Heritage Foundation and their breakoff group, the Oversight Project, formally urged the FBI to place TIVE into the domestic terrorist list. TIVE, TIVE, stands for Transgender Ideology-Inspired Violent Extremism. In their brief, they classify trans ideology as a, quote, belief that wholly or partially rejects fundamental science about human sex being biologically determined before birth, binary and immutable, end quote. In short, TIVE is described as, quote, unlawful use or threat of force or violence in furtherance of ideological agendas derived from 1, the belief that violence is justified against people who oppose trans ideology, and 2, the belief that opposing trans ideology itself constitutes a form of violence towards people who identify as any variant of trans or gender nonconforming, end quote. An article written in the UK's Independent stated that the Heritage Foundation and Oversight Project's definition of TIVE rhetoric appeared to be, quote, extremely broad and, quote, encompassing many arguments made by trans right activists, end quote. To that, I say, yeah, exactly. How many times have you heard that misgendering is violence, or seen a punch a turf written on a t-shirt or sign at a protest? Now, there is disagreement about the prevalence of trans violence. The Oversight Project asserts that in 2015, an estimated 50% of all major school shootings that are non-gang related have involved or likely involved transgender ideology. Now, I would like to point out that I did not find any source citation for this statistic. On the other hand, GLAAD purports that out of all mass gun violence since 2013, only 0.1% have been done by trans-identifying people. GLAAD refers to TIVE as, quote, just one example of anti-LGBTQ hate and disinformation, end quote. While the Oversight Project's brief makes it clear that, quote, they are not classifying all trans individuals or their allies as domestic terrorists, and that domestic terror designation only becomes relevant when Individuals or groups are motivated by an ideology that encourages, promotes, or condones violence, and they take or incite unlawful violent action based on that ideology. End quote. You can read the full brief and even sign the petition should you choose on the Oversight Project's website, www.itsyourgov.org. And now to Joss.
Thanks, Sylvia. A new nightclub in Sydney, Australia, named after the anthem Pink Pony Club by pop artist Chappell Roan, is drawing significant criticism for its stated intention to target primarily gay men, despite the song's origins as a celebration of queer culture. The club, backed by two gay men, owner Kevin Duvall and manager Michael Lewis, announced a strategy to cater unashamedly to men aged 18 to 35, with Lewis saying they hoped 90% plus of patrons would be gay men. Lewis said the venue was open to ladies too, but emphasized the goal of creating a predominantly gay male space. The decision sparked backlash from members of the queer community, particularly lesbian and queer women, who pointed out the irony of using a lesbian artist's song as the club's name while expressly not targeting the demographic most associated with it, females. On social media, one commenter wrote, quote, "Appropriating lesbian culture for your own benefit for gay men? What?" End quote. Responding to the criticism and a flood of comments on its Instagram, the club's team announced they will rename the venue. Lewis said, quote, "We acknowledge and respect the very passionate feedback from the wider community, and it is clear that it's best to move forward with a different name for the new venue." End quote. To which a commenter on Instagram quipped, "Lol, imagine renaming your club instead of being more inclusive." End quip. The controversy highlights tensions within the LGBTQ plus community around culture, inclusivity, representation, and the expectations tied to quote unquote queer spaces. So I'm going to sort of open the library for a moment, because when I first heard about the controversy around this whole thing, I thought, wow, these are some first world problems. To be so upset over the name of a gay club geared toward gay men is possibly the epitome of self-indulgence and entitlement. It's just a name. It's not that big of a deal. And not for nothing, but because of this article, I ended up listening to Chappell's album, who, by the way, spells her name Chappelle. So I keep having to remind myself that Chappelle is actually Chappell, but I digress. Her album is extremely referential of many artists who came to fame or fame-ish during the late 90s and early aughts. La Tigra, Tegan and Sarah, Jump Little Children, Radiohead, Florence and the Machine, Robin, and on. On first listen, I liked a number of her songs because they reminded me of artists I already love. Beyond this, though, her onstage persona and aesthetic are influenced by drag queen culture. Her entire career is referential. So, gay men choose a gay anthem for a gay club, and the queer community loses its mind calling it appropriation because the club owner said he wanted to have 90% gay male clientele. What? Get out of here with that. In the introduction to his book, Who Needs Gay Bars, which documents the decline of gay nightlife, Gregor Mattson says, quote, "Fully 50% of gay bars closed in the 19 years between 2012 and 2021, end quote. And we know there are just a few lesbian bars left worldwide. Gay spaces are and have been very important to community building. I met my wife at Faces in Orlando in 2001, which was a lesbian bar, which sadly closed in 2007. Honestly, maybe anyone in the orbit of the business development team could have just mentioned to them that they may naturally draw a female audience and suggest a different name, rather than it becoming this whole big thing resulting in two gay businessmen giving a groveling apology for insulting the queer community after getting ratioed and rated with angry comments by the LGBTQs on social media. And I'm curious, what do you two think about the Pink Pony Club controversy?
I think the key thing that I heard from you was when they did decide to change the name, and that person on social media was like, well, imagine changing the name rather than making it more inclusive. And that to me seems to be the crux of the issue. People do not like it when you create exclusive spaces. Now, I full stop think gay men absolutely have the right to their own spaces and have a right to center themselves at their own spaces. And I think it's ridiculous. This craze to be make every single environment inclusive, but that does seem to be the cultural zeitgeist, particularly in these sort of, queery circles, that you can't have a space that is exclusive. And this whole, oh, you have to rename your club thing, it was just a Trojan horse to get this club to, I guess, let more women in. That's how I would interpret it.
I think it's just another example of how same-sex oriented people can't have anything, and that every space has to be heterosexual, mixed sexed. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, you can't have homosexual community without single sex spaces. And there's nothing wrong with gay men wanting to have a single sex space or a 90% single sex space, not even 100% single sex space. And it's really offensive that offends people. Furthermore, if the issues with the name Pink Pony Club, I mean, like, Chapel Roan says that her inspiration is from drag queens, so primarily gay men. I don't know how the Pink Pony Club song is a lesbian anthem, especially when the singer of it loves gay male culture. So it would make sense that the Pink Pony Club would be a gay male club for that matter. And Joss, I loved your analysis of Chapel Roan's style of singing, and I just keep my mouth shut when I have friends or family that talk about how much they love Chapel Roan, because I've never really seen the pull. Seems very manufactured to me, but I guess everybody always thinks that their taste in music is better than everyone else's. But yeah, I can't eye roll enough at the response, and it makes me sad that they capitulated somewhat to the mob.
Yeah, I like that. Can't eye roll enough. 'Cause that's exactly the same place that I find myself in this whole thing. And I think you both hit the nail on the head too. It's the inability of having single sex spaces anywhere. Because it really is just about this whole queer, open the door, everybody's invited. The problem with this whole thing was these two men gave an interview and they just said they hoped to have not like as a business, they're going to target men aged 18 to 35 in their advertising. It's not that they're going to have somebody at the door doing inspections to make sure that once they get 10% females in there, out, anybody else is out. It's so asinine to me that this is a conversation that we have to have at all. And that the fact that the queer community doesn't understand how important gay spaces are. And this is another one. Why be so upset about something? Why not be excited that there's yet another gay bar when there's such a dearth of them globally? Gay male bars and lesbian bars. Lesbian bars, of course, a small handful left, and most of them are queer still. They're not exclusively lesbian bars anymore. For men to put money down in this day and age to make another gay space is a beautiful thing, and I'm just shocked that this is a controversy at all.
Yeah, and I agree too with the whole assessment that Chapel Roan represents a sort of aspect of modern pop music that is very derivative, and it almost by definition of the genre now seems to be all about sort of paying homage to previous artists and sort of creative imitation of other artists and the different subcultures. And maybe you like that, maybe you don't, but it seems very disingenuous to complain about ripping off a pop act that herself is all about. I mean, I'm using the term rip off here, but I don't mean that as an insult. I'm just saying it's derivative of other cultures and other artists. It doesn't make any sense to make that complaint.
Has Chapel Roan commented at all? I mean, yeah.
No, not that I'm aware, not one bit. Because why would she? It's still not a big deal. But they got ratioed to the point that they had to shut down their Instagram account. Like all it says now is new name coming soon. Like that's insane.
And I think that they're going to find that the new name isn't going to fix the problem at all. I hope they call it the purple pony.
That would be fantastic. Because you're right. It's not going to fix the problem. There's no appeasing. There's no appeasing the queerness out there that's just so ready to be so upset about everything. Like just take a breath, take a beat, and not everything is such a drama.
I guess all I want to say is that can the younger generations chill just a little bit and let gay people build stuff for ourselves? And some spaces are inherently exclusionary. It is what it is. Not everything is for you, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, doesn't mean that you're not liked. It just means that you're not welcome in the Pink Pony Club because you're not a gay guy. And yeah, I really do hope that they change it to Purple Pony Club or maybe Fuchsia.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. That was very well said. And I think we'll end this week's news roundup on that note. We hope to see you again next time, and goodbye, everyone.